At St. John's University, stay close while you stand out. We offer top-ranked programs with the latest technology, scholarships, and financial aid. St. John's offers you a place to call your own. Visit stjohns.edu/standout.
David, welcome to Spotlight on St. John's.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
So much stuff I want to cover, but first I want to get right into your book, Fabulous to Futile in Flushing. Tell us about it.
You can read about every single season in Met history. There's a lot of losing, not a lot of offense, but there's a long journey looking through the entire history. I think a lot of the fun for the fans is going to be some of the losing years, actually, in a weird way, because there's so much about 1969 and 1986 out there. But I think people will have fun reading about 1980 and 1995 and 2004, and they'll go, I remember that game, or I remember that player. I haven't thought about him in years.
Now, you took an interesting approach, because it's almost like a media guide, an encyclopedia, a kind of a reference book. Could you talk a little bit about how you developed the book and your research and how you got to the finished product?
Mm-hmm. Well, I was thinking early on about just making it about the opening day games, because the Mets have kind of a interesting opening day history. And then you realize anybody could just kind of look up the box scores of those games, so I kept branching it out, and the publisher of Summer Game Books was very helpful. And then he goes, how about we just write about every single season and give short little recaps of them? Although there's a lot of research that goes into the short little recaps, and there was a lot of relying on Baseball Reference, and I have a lot of respect for people who did this before the internet, because I don't know how this would have been possible.
How did you do your research?
A lot of Googling, and a lot of just a lot of Googling and looking at old articles and going on YouTube and watching old games.
And you did this over how long a period of time? Was it
a few years on and off.
Really?
Yeah.
Where did the idea or where did the inspiration come from?
I think I just wanted to do a Met history book. I had written a few before. One was Tom Gamboa, My Life in Baseball. He managed the Brooklyn Cyclones most recently, and it was his autobiography I co-wrote with him. And then Rye Gasper, Miracle Met. He was the 1969 Met outfielder, and that book came out last year. And then finally I decided to write one on my own, and I figured Met history I know about, so let's go with that.
Now, you're a Met fan. You're a lifelong Met fan. Did you feel, as you were doing your research, did you have any implicit bias, or were you, how did you, I mean, because in each chapter, you identify a fabulous player and a futile player. I mean, how did you make these decisions?
Well, I just let the stats figure that out. I didn't let any bias come in on whom my least favorite might be. The futile players, it's only based on the stats, not my personal feelings.
Excellent, excellent. Now, could you talk about being a Met fan? What is that like for your own personal life? You're a native Queens guy, you're from Forest Hills. Talk about your Mets journey over the years.
Usually painful, but fortunately I started watching in 1999. That was really, 98 I watched a tiny bit, but 99 was the first time where it was, okay, every day I'm looking at the box score, this is my life now. And I was fortunate because the Mets, Mike Piazza and John Olerud and Robin Ventura and Edgardo Alfonso, it was an excellent team. And they almost made the World Series, and then 2000 they did make the World Series. Right. So, as I said, everybody thinks the teams that they grow up watching are special, but instead of 1979 and 1980, I got to watch 99 and 2000.
And then you had some lean years after that.
Yeah, they spoiled me. It was kind of like, bait and switch or something. You go, wow, this is how it is every year. And that's the way it was in New York. The Yankees were winning the World Series. The Devils were winning the Stanley Cup. The Knicks were in the finals, the right. Liberty. And it's like, okay, all these teams can't stink for the next 20 years, right? But here we are.
There you go. Now, could you talk a little bit about, and I'm a Met fan myself, kind of the persona of the Met fan, or what it means to be a Met fan? Because as I tell my own children, it builds character. You're going to get your heart broken virtually every season. But
it truly is the spiritual children of the Brooklyn Dodgers. I think there's definitely a little brother complex, I think a lot of times. They're kind of similar to Yankees fans, but I think they expect to lose, and they think that makes them more virtuous in a way. Like, where you have to deal with the hard times, but that makes the 2015s more special, I guess.
Right. Now, baseball has changed over the years with interleague play, with some of the other rule changes. Are you a traditionalist? Or are you one of these people who's open to seeing different changes in the game?
Depends what the change is. This year, I think the only sport that apologizes for how boring it is. Everything they do is, okay, we'll put a runner on second. We know you don't want to watch anymore. We'll try to speed it up. 9 innings. You know what? 9 innings is too much.
I hate that change.
Oh, I know. How
personally.
about 7-inning doubleheaders? We're sorry, we know you don't want to watch this. We'll make it shorter.
Right.
I mean, they apologize for everything that they do. It's bizarre. The other sports actually say, look how great we are, and baseball goes, we're sorry, we'll try to get it over with as soon as we can.
And do you think that's here for the long term, or?
I don't know. It could be. I don't know. I mean, the World Series we just had was the lowest rated ever, so I guess it's not attracting the casual fan.
Interesting. Now, your book, each chapter for every year from 62 to 2019, opening day lineup, key acquisitions and departures, very informative, fun details. One of the interesting things that I liked was, who knew that this player was a Met? Where did you come up with that idea?
The Mets have a weird history of guys ending their careers with them. Of course, there are also the players that get good after they leave the Mets.
Right.
But there's a lot of, Jose Lima ending his all-star career with the Mets for, 4 starts. I just thought that was kind of a fun part of their history.
I had forgotten about John Candelaria, the Candy
Oh,
Man.
yes. 3 starts in '87 when, Ron Darling was hurt and David
Right.
Cohn was hurt, and that was the year Tom Seaver tried to come back.
That's right.
They were really desperate, and at the end, John Candelaria, 3 starts.
There you go. Now, are you a data guy? Are you one of these people that pores over stat sheets and scorecards?
Not necessarily the sabermetrics. Not saying that they don't have their place, but I can't, I don't even know what half the stats are.
How long did it take you to write the book?
It was over a few years on and off, because I'd started it with the opening day idea, and then it was.
And did you do it in chronological order?
No, I probably should have. I don't know why I didn't, but
Okay.
I guess it was just easier to bounce around sometimes.
And how do you approach, because this is your 3rd book you've written, how do you approach writing? Because you're a writer by trade, as associate editor at the Queen's Chronicle, but do you come home from work and you bang out a couple hours a night, or how do you approach the writing craft?
That's how it was going over the winter. I think it's easy with the books I do, because the first 2 were autobiographies, and I transcribed a lot of what they said in interviews. And then this one is pretty sad of, okay, here's the moves they made, here's a review of the season. It's not like I had to put a 200-page,
Right.
work of fiction from my head. It's all the stats and just trying to compile them in a neat order.
What is your favorite part of the book, if any?
I might have to go 99 and 2000 just for some of the memories it brought back, and Bobby Valentine, what a character he was, and
Right.
some of the great playoff moments they had.
Right. Did you learn, what was the most interesting thing that you learned?
I think the fun thing is how open some of the players and managers used to be talking to the press, because now they're a little playing it closer to the vest. But it's fun, they used to let off steam a little more, and one of the funny ones was Shea Kuzmin talking in the late 70s about the run support he would get. And he goes, after 10 years, I would like a little bit. And even David Cohn heading into one season just talking about how bad the infield defense was behind him. He's like, yeah, we all talk about it. I'd be lying if I said we didn't.
Right.
Now Jacob deGrom gets like 20 runs of support a year, and he just has to sit there and, say they're all trying.
That's a good point. Do you have other books in mind?
Not at the moment. This was kind of exhausting. It's one of those, I think a lot of authors have it. You do the book and you go, I'm never doing another one of those again. And then
Right.
2 months later you go, I have an idea for a book.
And what has the reception been like, or what is the feedback you've gotten?
It's been positive. I think a lot of people, similar to what I said earlier, enjoy the forgotten years and
Right.
the parts that aren't covered, because SNY plays a lot of the same classic games a lot. But
That's
here,
right.
the ones you may have forgotten from the early 80s or the mid-90s.
In the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, I kind of enjoyed seeing some of those old games. But after a while, when you know how, every outcome of every game like that, the classics, it does make you miss. How did you deal during the pandemic with, not having baseball for a while?
Watching all the old games, which I have a ton of DVDs anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't. I probably would have been watching the old DVDs anyway. I didn't even know there was a pandemic until July. It's like, who even knew? My life changed so little.
Right. If you could do one do-over in Mets history, what would it be?
Oh. 2006 Game 7. I think I still can't believe they lost to an 83-win Cardinals team. The less I say, the better, because I'm going to get very annoyed and ruin your show. And I guess on a personal thing, Gil Hodges passing away.
Right.
I think that.
I mean, all right. I'm a little surprised. I think most Met fans would probably, of a certain era, would say Seaver and letting Seaver go.
Right. They were already so bad in '77 that I
Right.
don't know if holding on to him would have made a difference
Okay.
in '78 or '79. But 2006, they were right there. They won 97 games.
Right.
All they had to do was beat this 83-win Cardinals team, and they couldn't do it.
Couldn't get it done. The Mets, again, and we talked a little bit about the persona, but if you had to describe the Mets to someone who knew nothing about them, how would you describe the New York Mets?
Occasional glimpses of brilliance, and a lot of suffering to get there, but the payoff is worth it, and the fans are pretty loyal.
I think you're right about the fans. The fans, there's something very endearing about, Met fans. I think, we know every year what we're going to get into, and yet we're there.
And there's always that great thing in March. You're still 0-0. You go, if they stay healthy, and if this guy does well, and if this guy has a career year.
Right.
There are a lot of ifs, but you always talk yourself into, okay, they could be a contender.
And especially with their opening day record. They always, hope springs it.
You can almost always count on them going 1-0. It's usually, even Joe Torre, when he was the Met manager, he always won on opening day.
Right.
It was games 2 through 162 that gave him problems.
You're a St. John's graduate. Let's talk a little bit about your St. John's experience. Actually, let's go back a little bit further. Queens native, Forest Hills High School, and then you went to?
Queensboro Community College first. This goes back to when I was a kid, getting into sports in the late 90s, 99, 2000, and St. John's was excellent, Elite 8 in 99, Big East champions in 2000. So I knew when I was 7 as a sports fan, I wanted to go to St. John's. They haven't won a tournament game since I decided I wanted to go to St. John's. I don't know.
We won't blame you on that.
No, okay, good. But they're New York's college team. I don't care what Syracuse says. They could be upstate New York's college team. So St. John's was always where I wanted to go. I didn't even care about other colleges in terms of applying or looking. And then I went to Queensboro for 2 years, save a little money. And I'm glad I did. Met a lot of great people there and did basketball announcing there, and then came here.
Transferred here, studied journalism, or?
Yeah, majored in journalism, which is also nice because I ended up getting a career in what I majored in, which isn't the case for everyone.
Any extracurriculars, any activities, anything that stood out in your college time?
So a little writing for the Torch.
Okay.
The fun one was Lou Carnesecca's name was misspelled on the campus map. That's probably the funniest story I wrote.
I remember that one.
And it was the #1 building on the list, but they had CARNA second. And I actually spoke to him about it. He happened to be on
and
campus.
He took it in stride, I'm sure.
Definitely. I go, they spelled your name wrong. He goes, don't worry, it's been killed 1,000 times.
We'll have to blame it on the printer or something.
That's right.
We won't own that one. Favorite professor, favorite class, anything that stood out in the classroom?
There were a few. I had a bunch of professors multiple times. Professor Tomes for history. There's a funny one. So the first class I ever had here was Nick Hirshon.
Sure.
Journalism. And I'm looking at him, and I go, he looks familiar. And he was my camp counselor in 2003.
No way.
And I go, I know this guy. And I'm looking at him, and I'm spending the whole class looking at him going, don't I know this guy? And I go, Magic
He's
Carpet
the
Dick
Forest
now."
Hills guy himself.
Oh, yeah, we live a few minutes from each other.
Right.
See each other all the time. But I hadn't seen him in almost 10 years. And I go, weren't you a camp counselor? And we remembered each other because at camp we both wore Mets hats.
Okay.
That's the other thing. He had the 40th anniversary Met cap, and I have the 2000 World Series Met cap, two dark moments.
And Nick not only was a torch writer, but a prolific writer since then. He's written a number of books, and yeah, he's had a nice career since then. Excellent. So you graduate from St. John's. First job out of St. John's is where?
Well, there were a few freelance writing jobs. I had been at the Queens Tribune doing freelance work, NewYorkSportsDay.com. And then Queens Chronicle I was freelancing with for 2 months, and then they hired me full-time.
Excellent. And you cover a specific geographic beat, yes?
Yes, even though sometimes we delve into each other's areas, but I'm central and mid-Queens.
Okay. What is it like reporting on the neighborhood that you live in?
Convenient. Yeah, I live in Forest Hills and I work in Glendale, and I get to cover those areas, so definitely very convenient.
Do people go to you with stories? Do your neighbors know what you do and that kind of thing?
Occasionally, you don't get the whole, oh, you should write about A, B, and C. I think that's kind of a stereotype. I don't get that a lot. Some people occasionally will call or email.
And you cover a wide array of topics. I've seen some of your writing, neighborhood stuff, some politics, community events.
Yeah, lately with COVID, it's all been businesses closing, still some politics stories. There were plenty of obituaries.
Now, you wrote a column earlier this year, which I really got a kick out of, and I want to talk about it. It was called Catching Up with David Russell.
Yes.
And talk about that.
So David Russell, one of the great scorers of St. John's basketball in the early 80s, no relation. And it was always one of these things of people going, you should talk to David Russell. That's got to be the whole thing. David Russell talks to David Russell, and I finally got him.
How did you track him down?
I forget if he was on Facebook or if I found his email online. I forget the exact setup. A very nice part of the '83 Big East championship team.
A great player who had a long career over in Europe, and now is working right here in Queens.
Working for the MTA.
Yeah.
I believe it was Long Island Railroad.
Right. And did did he enjoy the conversation, or?
I think he got a kick out of it also.
Yeah.
And those guys like to be remembered.
Right.
As well, because I think with St. John's, 1985 is the iconic team in the Final Four, but I feel sometimes
The '83 team won the Big East Conference, and David was a key part of that.
tremendous, and even '79 made the Elite Eight, '91 made the Elite Eight, '99, and some of those teams get a little overshadowed by
Right.
'85,
Right.
but they shouldn't be forgotten.
Sports. Mets, your number one team. I mean, what other sports do you follow? Do you write about? You've covered? I know you've covered some St. John's stuff in the past.
Yeah, I've covered I covered some New York Giants football games for New York Sports Day. Covered the New York Liberty for a little while for New York Sports Day. So pretty widespread.
Now, if we're honest, most of us when we're kids, we want to grow up and be athletes or professionals. Was that the case for you, or what?
No, I knew my limitations.
Okay.
I wanted to work in sports, but I realized playing wasn't how it was going to be. So I guess writing is the next logical step.
Excellent.
Plus, the writers could last a lot longer than the players.
And the access and get to see
Okay.
some of the best moments in sports on a daily basis.
Sure. I don't
So,
see any 60-year-olds playing in the major leagues, but I see them in the press box.
there you go. What was your dream job when you were younger? Or were you always on a path to journalism? Or?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if there was necessarily one specific dream job, but I think just being a writer and being a sports writer was probably at the
The
top.
next step in your education may be closer than you think at St. John's University, a Catholic and Vincentian university with a proud 150-year history. St. John's has 3 campuses in New York, so you can stay close while you stand out. We offer top-ranked academic programs, state-of-the-art facilities, financial aid, and scholarships. Above all, St. John's offers you a place to call your own. Visit stjohns.edu/standout to learn more and apply now.
And we have a new season, always looking ahead to the next season and next game. New ownership. What are your thoughts on the Mets in 2021?
So far, so good. Steve Cohen definitely won the press conference, which the Mets always win the press conference. Now they have to win the games.
That's true.
It does seem like he's going to spend more money, which doesn't always mean they're going to win. Everybody assumes, well, they're spending more money, but that's also how you get Jeremy Burnitz and Mo Vaughn and Roberto Alomar. So it's not a guarantee, but I do think it's a good thing. I think Cohen is looking to spend. I think Alderson will spend it wisely, though. I don't think Steve Cohen has $14 billion for making stupid decisions.
Right.
So I think he'll find the balance between spending and spending wisely.
Will there be a long honeymoon for Steve Cohen and the new ownership and team that he's going to put together?
I think he'll have a year, especially coming off the last season. Things are just so weird. Who even knows how next season is going to look?
Right.
Or fans will even be there to cheer or boo. So that could play into it also. If they do well the first year, the honeymoon will keep going. And Cohen said he wants to bring back Old Timers Day. Maybe they'll look to retire some more numbers. So I think
Right.
that'll build some goodwill with the
Right.
fans. He owns the Mets, not the Brooklyn Dodgers.
That's true. When I was a young fan, I always enjoyed Banner Day, when fans would get to parade onto the field with their banners and go back and look at some of the old footage and photos. There's some colorful banners in more ways than one.
And they brought that back a few years ago, although I don't know if they're still...
Yeah, I think it was a one-off type of thing then. Yeah. What other unique or idiosyncrasies about the Mets? I was reminded reading your book, some of the freak accidents and the weird injuries that the Mets have had over the years. Could you speak to some of them? Even from early on, I think the opening day pitcher had, or
Yes, well, the first ever starter in Met history was supposed to be Sherman Jones. And a few days before he was lighting a cigarette, and somehow the matchstick got in his eye, and he was sidelined for a few days, and Roger Craig started the first game in Met history, and Jones had to start the first home game, which is such a bizarre injury. If I tried to light a match and have the matchstick go in my eye a million times, I couldn't do it. And George Theodore and Don Hahn colliding in '73, and
A guy reached into a shaving bag, cut his finger, and injured himself. We've had some real freak accidents off the field.
that's right. Well, the one pitcher who was mad at himself and he kicked the dugout and broke his toe. You know, the Mike Cameron and Carlos Beltran collision in the outfield, Dykstra and Mookie Wilson colliding.
Syndergaard, hoof and mouth.
Oh yeah, yeah. They find the weirdest. I think Mets fans the last 5 years are probably medical experts with all the arm injuries they have. They could practically be doctors now and go, oh yeah, that's a UCL injury,
Right.
that's a rotator cuff.
And we won't get started about Cespedes and some,
No, injuring both heels.
with the
injuries
wild
you-
boar involved.
Yeah,
right?
you can't make it up.
Yeah. Other unique things about Met fans that you may not find in another ballpark or another team, if you had to identify them.
Trying to think the passion I think it goes back to with the Mets, and just that kind of, you know, the Yankees are better, you know, probably 2 or 3 of the teams in the division are better, but they always, you know, 2015, they always just do enough to keep bringing you back into hope that, okay, we could do it this year.
Now, could you talk about, because I grew up in Shea Stadium, and then now we have Citi Field. Could you compare and contrast the two from your point of view?
I'm a weird stadium guy. Most people would take Citi Field, and it probably is nicer if I was being
Aesthetically.
objective, but I'm not going to be objective. I like Shea Stadium more.
Right.
That's where I grew up. In Citi Field, it's nice, it's fancy, but it feels like a big restaurant that happens to have a ball field in the middle. You know, the Citi Field shopping mall at Flushing, and by the way, here's a place you can watch baseball. If the line at Shake Shack isn't too long, you can get around to watching baseball.
Talk about a game day experience for someone who's never been to Citi Field, you know, from start to finish, whether it's arriving on the number 7 line or the railroad or you know, doing the tailgating. Take us through a game day experience.
So taking the 7 train and getting into the rotunda, the Jackie Robinson rotunda, taking the elevator up around the rotunda, and then getting to see that field, which is still special even if you've done it a million times. Still seeing the ball field, knowing there's a game that day.
Right.
Is nice, and seeing the home run apple, which hopefully will appear a few times that day.
Exactly. Want to move to a lightning round?
Sure.
So quick, short answers. Would you rather watch a game on TV or listen to the radio broadcast?
TV. I need the visuals, and I'm spoiled by Gary, Keith, and Ron.
That's a good, I will say that. The Mets have always had some pretty good broadcasters
That's
over
the
the
trade-off. Even in their darkest days, you get Murphy and Kiner and Nelson. So
That's
the
right.
announcers have always been there, the team,
Right.
iffy.
Well, I'm old enough to remember Kiner's Corner, the post-game show, and that was always a special moment. And Bob Murphy, you know, always back with the happy recap, you know, on the radio.
It's nice a few of the Kiner's Corners have actually popped up on YouTube because they were thought to be lost for a long time. I think Channel...
Really?
Yeah, you know...
WOR, Channel 9?
Yeah, they taped over all of them.
Wow.
People, you know, they just didn't think, you know, people aren't going to watch an old game.
Right. Yeah, now that was fun. That was always, you know, a special part of the post-game stuff, seeing who would be on Kiner's Corner. Paperback or ebook? Because your book is available by both. How do you normally read? Or
I'm old school. I like having the book in my hands and flipping.
you mentioned you prefer Shea or Citi Field, Shea over Citi Field. What other differences or what between the two?
Well, the other funny thing is Upper Deck at Shea Stadium was basically halfway to the clouds. I mean, you needed like you know, binoculars to see what was going on the field. The Upper Deck of Citi Field, you still are closer to the action.
Your all-time, 1 through 9, your all-time Mets lineup. Take it away.
Wow. Position by position.
Do it.
Here we go. Piazza catching. Say Hernandez at first. Say Alfonso at second. Reyes and right on the left side of the infield. Cleon in left. Strawberry in right. And then center field is kind of up there. Probably should go Beltran, but because he looked at strike 3, I'll go with AG or Dykstra.
And who is your reliever? And your starting pitcher.
Well, starting pitcher, I'll be very obvious and say Seaver.
Okay.
And closer, I guess, the longevity, I'll go with Franco. Although Jesse Orozco could be in the conversation.
And who's in the dugout? Who's on the bench?
That's a tough one. I think I would go with Davey Johnson. I think he was probably the best. If you wanted to say Gil Hodges because of the way he made them into winners, and the only reason he didn't win more is because he died, I can't argue with that. But it's like 1A and 1B for best manager. And if they won in 2000, maybe Bobby Valentine could have been the guy.
They've had some unique managers and personalities over the year in the dugout.
Yes. My favorite was George Bamberger quitting 45 games into the '83 season and going, I think I've suffered enough.
That may not be a good way to end this conversation. The book is Fabulous to Futile in Flushing. The author is David Russell. It's available on Amazon. It's available in bookstores. And it's a great read if you're a Mets fan. If you're not a Mets fan and just want to know something more about a great team, a special part of Queens County, I highly recommend it. I think it's something you can pick up, thumb through almost any page, learn something new, have a nice flashback or maybe a traumatic flashback, depending on what you're reading. But it's a quick, great, easy read, especially for the off season. I want to thank David Russell for coming on, and onward and upward. Great job.
Thank
At St. John's University, stay close while you stand out. We offer top-ranked programs with the latest technology, scholarships, and financial aid. St. John's offers you a place to call your own. Visit stjohns.edu/standout.